members, Mrs. Bill, you have anything in prayer?
The Lord be with you, with thy spirit. Let us pray.
Ms. Bill, can I ask you to adjust your mic? We're having difficulty hearing you.
Can you hear me? Is that better? Is that better, Mr. Speaker? Can you hear me?
Proceed.
Okay. The Lord be with you, and with thy spirit.
Yes,
Let us
yeah.
pray. Lord, have mercy upon us. Christ, have mercy upon us. Lord, have mercy upon us. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness hast appointed the office of rulers and parliament for the welfare of society and the just government of men, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us thy servants. And thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of important destinies islands. Let thy blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interests thou hast committed to our charge. And this we beg for Jesus Christ his sake. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Bill. Members, the House is now in session. The minutes from the 2nd of July have been circulated. Are there any amendments, adjustments required? There are none. The minutes will be printed as confirmed, as printed. Messages from the governor? There are none. Announcements by the Speaker? There are none. Messages from the Senate? There are none. Papers and communications? We have 3 this morning. The first is in the name of the Minister of Social Development and Seniors, Minister Ferbert. Would you like to present your matter at this time? Minister Ferbert? We're going to move on. Minister Hayward, would you like to present your paper at this time? Communication.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the House of Assembly the Employment Probationary Period Exemption Regulations 2021. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The next this morning is in the name of the Minister of Health. Minister of Health, would you like to present yours?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the Public Health COVID-19 Emergency Extension Number 4, Order 2021, proposed to be made by the Minister of Health in exercise of the power conferred by Section 107A of the Public Health Act 1949.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Ferbert, are you available?
Yes, apologies, Mr. Speaker, a bit of technical difficulty. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of this Honorable House of Assembly the Human Rights Commission's Annual Report 2020. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Move on. Petitions, there are none. Statements by ministers and junior ministers. We have 6 statements this morning. The first statement is in the name of the Premier. Premier, would you like to present your statement?
Certainly, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to you.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to provide an update on financial support provided to Bermuda businesses through the Bermuda Economic Development.
Mr. Premier, one sec. Your camera is on, but I think you need to adjust the item that's in front of your camera. There you go. Yes.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. Should I begin again?
At all. we want to make sure we see that red and blue tie, see?
Oh, absolutely, Mr. Speaker. I have a different red and blue tie for every day leading up to Cotton Action. I'll
There
make
you go.
sure they're all on display, especially for those persons who, may be confused as to my affiliation due to some Photoshop pictures that are sneaking around the internet.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to provide an update on the financial support provided to Bermuda businesses through the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation since the declaration of the global pandemic. The BEDC is currently responsible for providing financial support and technical advice to small and medium-sized businesses, for overseeing the economic empowerment zones, for growing outside vendor markets, and for managing vendors and issuing vending licenses. The organization's key objective remains to assist the government in encouraging economic growth for Bermuda's local, small, and medium-sized businesses. By no stretch of the imagination has the last 16 months been easy for both Bermuda and the world. The pandemic has wrought havoc on all aspects of civil society, and Bermuda's businesses have not been spared. However, Mr. Speaker, in order to address the debilitating impacts of the global pandemic on Bermuda's local, small, and medium businesses, the BDC had no choice but to pivot significantly to expand both its financial products and its advisory services so that local businesses had the best chance of successfully managing the new normal. With support from the government of Bermuda, the BDC responded quickly and decisively with customized products and services aimed at helping businesses navigate the challenges presented by the impact of the coronavirus. As of today, the BEDC has deployed a total of $4.4 million in funding to local small and medium-sized businesses since the onset of the global pandemic, and I'll break down this financial support further. But before doing so, I think that it is important to provide an overview of the efforts of the BEDC since March 2020 in assisting our island's entrepreneurs and business owners. Mr. Speaker, on March 20th, 2020, the BEDC announced that it would reallocate funds from its budget and also modify its existing products and services to be able to provide local business owners with support during uncertain times with the onset of the pandemic. The raft of support mechanisms implemented were as follows. First, the BEDC reallocated $350,000 from its existing operations programs to its capital budget to increase its capitalization to $2 million. This allowed for, first, an increase to $1 million in direct lending funds to assist businesses, and an increase to $12 million for issuing loan guarantees for financing. Next, the BDC reallocated $100,000 from its existing budget to provide access to business to external expertise in accounting, legal, and marketing services, which supplemented the BDC's support and expertise to assist in right-sizing businesses once COVID-19 passes. Next, the BDC facilitated the creation of an ideas pool where businesses could write in with recommendations and suggestions on how public authorities and departments could assist them. Further, the BDC amended its payment terms to pay all vendors on a weekly basis to ensure they were not waiting for payments to facilitate better cash flow. Next, the BDC acted as an intermediary, connecting consumers, buyers with sellers, as businesses had underused inventory. The BDC facilitated businesses in forming partnerships, merging, sharing overhead with other businesses to reduce operating costs both during and once the COVID-19 pandemic passes. The BDC increased its microloan offering from $20,000 up to a maximum of $30,000 per business with no security required. New microloan clients received a decrease in interest rates by 1.5% to 3% and 3.5% for EEZ and non-EEZ businesses, respectively. The microloans were expanded to be used for both capital and working capital purposes. Further, all new and existing microloan clients have the option to restructure their loans for a 3 to 6 month interest-only repayment period based on need, then followed by principal and investment payments. Existing microloan clients have the option to extend their loan repayment terms from prior 9 to 24 months up to 42 months if needed, which reduce their monthly payment amounts once the principal and interest phase of their loans commence. Further, the BDC increased its guarantee to 75% from 65% of a bank loan up to a maximum of $300,000 as a result of the new increased capitalization of $2 million. The BDC allowed its guarantee to be applied for the first time against lending from other entities, such as could be seen with the partnership with the Bermuda Credit Union Co-op Society. The BDC immediately reduced application fees by 50% for all of its products. The BDC also immediately reduced its loan guarantee fees by 50%. The BDC decided to absorb the cost of credit checks, thereby eliminating this fee to the client. Entrepreneurs who operated seasonal businesses had the option to have recurring interest-only periods for the life of their microloans. All new approved microloans have the option to delay the first repayment date by 2 months to be on the last business day of the month, 2 months after the month for which the first drawdown occurred. This applies to the interest-only option also. Further, the BDC increased the maximum credit line it guarantees for its letter of credit products to retailers from $10,000 to $12,500. The BDC significantly expanded its seminar and webinar programming as business needed access to business knowledge and best practice over the last 15 months to help right size. The BDC offered all its seminars and webinars free of charge to all business owners and entrepreneurs who registered. And finally, registration fees for all BDC's multi-week courses were reduced by 50%. Mr. Speaker, I have taken the time to set out in careful detail the actions taken on behalf of small and medium-sized businesses and the extensive work the BDC has and continues to do to support them. Additionally, the BDC also worked with the Ministry of Finance and other government departments to determine what other relief could be provided to support business owners through the pandemic. In April 2020, the BDC further expanded the assistance it was able to provide to Bermuda's local small and medium-sized businesses. Now the corporation has been able to complete a jurisdictional review of other countries' support to SMEs to help inform Bermuda's support, complete a survey of local business needs, actively hold and participate in weekly webinars to assist local businesses and to connect them with each other, act as an intermediary between businesses and government departments for assistance and clarification when needed, continuing its Mind Your Own Business radio show on Asian 89 to engage and to inform local businesses, restructure its loan guarantees for businesses who had bank financing as needed, restructure the current BDC direct microloans portfolio based on their needs, respond to thousands of requests in emails, phone calls, and social media platform of questions for advice and direction, engage in numerous meetings and negotiations with the 3 banks to firm up the new guaranteeing of overdrafts and progressing our shared concept of providing pre-approved lump sums of guarantees to the financial institutions in order to cut processing times on business financing requests. Compile and distribute to local businesses a list of all government departments who offered COVID-19 relief and assistance. Compile and distribute to local businesses a list of all the banks' COVID-19 reliefs and assistance. Work with private sector entities such as the Bermuda Credit Union Co-op Society to develop additional financial products to support local, small, and medium-sized businesses to amplify what the BDC, the government, and the banks were providing. Mr. Speaker, through the Ministry of Finance's additional $12 million grant provided in 2020, the BDC's efforts to assist local, small, to medium-sized enterprises with funding shortfall needs increased dramatically. We were determined to be understanding and responsive as a government, and the additional grant support went a long way to assist local business survive over these last 16 months. The additional $12 million, supplemented by the BDC's $1 million in direct lending and $12 million in loan and overdraft guarantees, aligned the corporation to develop new and expanded financial products, including the creation of the COVID-19 Business Sustainability and Continuity Funding Program. The Relief Funding Program consists of a portfolio of financing products for businesses to take advantage as follows. First, the BDC COVID-19 Loan Grant Product. Next, the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation Microloan Product. Third, the BDC Debt Consolidation Microloan Product. Next, the BDC Loan Guarantee Product. Fifth, the BDC Overdraft Guarantee Product. And finally, the BDC COVID-19 Emergency Grant Fund. Over the last 16 months, the BDC has approved 255 applications, significantly outpacing approvals in a normal year, for a total of $4.36 million to assist our local small and medium businesses through a variety of financing options. The breakdown of the funding approved to date is as follows: 50 general debt consolidation microloans approved totaling $1.1 million in loan funds dispersed. 117 COVID-19 combined loans and grants approved totaling $2.4 million in funds dispersed. $1.1 million of this is the grant portion of this product, with the remaining $1.4 million being the loan portion. 5 loan guarantees have been approved, majority with the Bermuda Credit Union Co-op Society, totaling $289,000 in guarantee funds. 4 overdraft guarantees have been approved through the banks, totaling $152,000 in guaranteed funds. And finally, Mr. Speaker, 79 COVID-19 emergency grants have been approved, totaling $420,000 in grant funds dispersed. Mr. Speaker, the island's economic activity is expanding as a direct result of our effective management of the coronavirus. Local businesses will still require financial assistance, and the need has expanded from just surviving with funding for immediate overhead and working capital needs, as seen in the early days of the pandemic, to funding for pivoting, innovation, sustainability, and growth needs. As such, businesses will have access to the funds from the COVID-19 Business Sustainability and Continuity Funding Program, as is anticipated to at least further $3 to $4 million in financial support will be deployed by the end of this fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, let me close by expressing my thanks to the entire team of the BDC. The women and men working there have stayed true to their mission of doing all they can to assist small and medium-sized businesses. I must also recognize the able leadership of Ms. Erika Smith, who tirelessly champions the core values of the organization. The BDC team should be commended for their efforts, but ultimately the priority has been to save as many local businesses over this challenging 16 months as possible. Although much progress has been made to assist businesses, further support will be needed. Accordingly, I am pleased to advise the Honorable House and the public that the BDC will continue to provide COVID-19 funding support until March 31st, 2022. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. The next statement this morning, members, is from the Minister of Finance. Minister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to update this Honorable House on the work of the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, known as the Inclusive Framework on the Base Erosion and Profit Shifting. Mr. Speaker, the G20 commissioned the OECD to address base erosion and profit shifting, or BEPS, that had, in the view of the G20, increased because of the increased digitization of the global economy. In their opinion, this made it harder for the tax administrations of countries to collect corporate income tax within their proper jurisdictions. Mr. Speaker, in March of 2018, the Inclusive Framework, working through its task force on the digital economy, issued its Tax Challenges Arising from Digitization interim report of 2018, which recognized the need for a global solution. Work continued on this initiative, and in January of 2019, members of the Inclusive Framework agreed to examine proposals in 2 pillars, which could form the basis for a consensus solution to the tax challenges arising from digitization. Mr. Speaker, Pillar 1 is focused on nexus and appropriate profit allocation, while the core aspect, Pillar 2, relates to a global minimum corporate income tax intended to address remaining BEPS issues. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda has been an active Inclusive Framework member, working towards an appropriate outcome, which include the essential elements in Pillar 2 as initially outlined in the Inclusive Framework's thinking. This included the notion that all jurisdictions should have the right to create tax systems which are appropriate for their economies, whether or not such tax systems include or does not include a corporate income tax. Mr. Speaker, G7 leaders met in early June of 2021 in the UK prior to the scheduled July 1st Inclusive Framework meeting. They agreed to a high-level Pillar 2 framework, which included the establishment of a global minimum tax of at least 15% to be applied on a country-by-country basis. G7 urged the OECD and the steering group of the Inclusive Framework to endorse the G7 agreement and promote it to its members of the Inclusive Framework. Mr. Speaker, on July 1, 2021, the Inclusive Framework met and 130 of its 139 members supported the high-level Pillar 2 framework agreed to by the G7 and set a timeline of October 2021 to create and finalize the technical details. 2 of the outstanding 9 members indicated their support in the days following the meeting. Therefore, 132 members currently support the July 1, 2021 Inclusive Framework Statement. Mr. Speaker, at the July 10, 2021 G20 Finance Ministers meeting, all G20 ministers endorsed the July 1 statement of the Inclusive Framework. This agreement now establishes the basis for conducting the outstanding technical discussions. Mr. Speaker, with respect to Pillar 1, initial estimates conclude that approximately 80 multinational enterprises worldwide would qualify as in scope of Pillar 1 for purposes of being subject to partial profit reallocation under the terms of the agreement described in the Inclusive Framework Public Statement. The Pillar 1 agreements allow for an exclusion to apply to regulated financial services companies and certain natural resources companies. The details of these exclusions will be determined in the upcoming technical phase of the negotiations. Mr. Speaker, it is this technical phase, which will run from July to October, that all countries, including Bermuda, are now focused. Pillar 2 will be central to our considerations. As we have in the past, the Ministry of Finance will continue to work closely with our industry stakeholders and other strategic partners to advocate for technical details that are in Bermuda's interest and seek to enhance Bermuda's competitive position. Mr. Speaker, I believe that it is important to reiterate certain key points of my press statement of July the 2nd, 2021, the day following the publication of the Inclusive Framework Statement. These remarks reinforce Bermuda's position as a quality international financial center that appropriately plays its part on the global stage, and I quote, "As a country committed to transparency, cooperation, and high levels of compliance with international standards, the government of Bermuda joined the statement on a new framework for international taxation arising from the OECD Inclusive Framework meeting of July 1, 2021, and looks forward to supporting its ongoing technical discussions ahead of the G20 Finance Ministers meeting in October of 2021. Bermuda has been actively involved in ongoing discussions relating to this initiative to present positions that reflect the national interests and that of our various stakeholders. As part of that approach, we recognize the need to join with other members of the Inclusive Framework to reach this position supported by a significant majority of the membership. We fully intend to remain an active participant in the ongoing work of the Inclusive Framework to complete the development of an appropriate plan. We've noted areas of concern at a technical and practical level, which we look forward to working to resolve constructively in the months ahead." End quote. Mr. Speaker, we will press on to do the work that is required for continued success. You will recall that earlier this year, the government tabled legislation to embody the new Tax Reform Commission. This was approved by the legislature. Mr. Speaker, in due course, I will appoint persons to serve on the Tax Reform Commission, whose work will include various domestic issues and, as appropriate, consideration and analysis of the finally agreed full package of the 2 BEPS pillars. I therefore anticipate the Tax Reform Commission may not engage in the full scope of its work until after October 2021, when the technical aspects of the 2 BEPS pillars are completed by the Inclusive Framework and endorsed by the G20 meetings. Mr. Speaker, it is important to highlight that the work of the Commission and subsequent decision-making will reflect the culture of collaboration, innovation, and communication which has contributed to the success of this jurisdiction. In conjunction with industry and other key strategic partners, Bermuda will continue to look for opportunities and employ strategies that are beneficial to individuals and businesses and allow our island home to effectively compete in this ever-changing marketplace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in that of the name of the Minister of Transport. Minister, would you like to present your statement at this time?
Only if you feel as though I am appropriately dressed for the occasion, Mr. Speaker.
Now, I see you at a distance, but I do recognize some red in that color, so I'd assume that you are appropriately dressed with that blue beside it, so you can continue.
Thank you. As well as my colleague Neville Terrell's in red and blue as well. Just wanted to put that on the record. Mr. Speaker, on the
good company there.
Mr. Speaker, on the 27th of June of this year, the Fast Ferry Resolute returned to Bermuda after an extensive 9-month retrofit project at Gladden and Hearn Shipyard in Boston. The original builders at the cost of $2 million. This refit will extend the vessel's lifespan by some 12 years. Gladden and Hearn Shipbuilding is located in Massachusetts. It is the closest shipyard to Bermuda with suitable facilities and relevant expertise. While other yards may have suitable expertise, they are located further away. This increased distance represents a higher cost and risk for deliveries and could impact the vessel's return to service. Gladden and Hearn has a history of successful projects with marine and port services dating back to 1980. These projects include the St. George's pilot boat, built in 1980, Dragon buoy tender and buoys in 1981, Princeton and Inspector tugs in 1984, the St. David's pilot boat in 1986, the refit of the St. George in 1998, Serenity and Resolute ferries being built in 2002, St. David's pilot boat in 2011. Additionally, they regularly provide expert advice and service parts to marine and port services to keep the vessels in service. They value this business and interface with marine and port personnel as it gives them essential feedback as to which design details and products work best in Bermuda's environment so that they can improve their further service. Mr. Speaker, the Resolute has all new machinery, including main engines, generators, steering system, newly upgraded air conditioning, new windows, updated navigational equipment, all new interior, new bathrooms, and fully outfitted CCTV cameras with recording capabilities and a PA system for public safety announcements, to name a few. The Resolute is currently being cleaned and prepped to return to service on both the green and blue ferry routes, servicing both the general public and our cruise ship passengers. Last week, Thursday, I had the opportunity to see the upgrades firsthand. I was also able to meet with the All Marine and Ports crew who delivered the Resolute on the 635 nautical mile voyage across the North Atlantic Ocean. And those individuals are Captain Joseph Nicholas Maynard, Chief Engineer Jean Lemery, Deck Officer Elijah Simmons, Seaman Calvin Burgess, Seaman Warren Fogo, and Mechanic Jamal Smith. Mr. Speaker, the second fast ferry Serenity is scheduled to depart for Boston Shipyard the week of July 19th to undergo a similar refit and is expected to return to Bermuda in May of 2022. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of Minister of Works. Minister, would you like to present your statement?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, good morning.
Good morning, Minister. Go right ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to provide another update on the short-term stimulus program that was launched on December 17th, 2020, to a maximum value of Bermuda dollars 13.385. For small to medium-sized contractors were invited to participate. Mr. Speaker, the program was launched as it was determined There was an urgent need to provide stimulus to the local economy in order to retain and boost employment numbers in the wake of the economic downturn sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, as a result, the Ministry of Public Works immediately. These projects are infrastructure improvements and will not add further burden to government operation expenses. The selection principles are to maximize the employment of the private sector while providing much needed refreshing of neglected infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, to ensure a fair and equitable allocation of the stimulus funding across the participating businesses, the Ministry maintains a register of approved contractors and awarded contracts to ensure that no one company monopolizes the project list. Once the company obtains a project, they will be rotated to the bottom of the list to allow other companies an opportunity for work. Guiding principle is to prioritize all companies that provide the most employment benefit per dollar spent while spreading the work among the median owned and operated businesses. Many of these small to medium-sized businesses have never worked for government before, and oftentimes the challenge is growth. In light of this, we have arranged with the Accountant General's Department to accelerate the payment schedule to every 2 weeks, noting that those government money must engage in a payment plan in order to secure the work. Mr. Speaker,
Minister, you're having an audio problem there?
sorry?
You're having a little audio problem that time. Continue.
A total of 16 projects are underway. The 9 projects currently ongoing are as follows. Flatsbridge Handrail project work underway. Artemis Building B interior work started May 21st, 2021, duration 8 weeks. Elva Beach access May 17th, 2021. The duration 5 weeks. Substantial completion has been achieved with the steps poured and in place, waiting on fabrication and installation of handrails, which should be complete in 2 to 3 weeks. The new plant inspection building at Botanical Gardens started May 24th duration 16 weeks. Veranda repairs at Camden. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to turn my video off to help with the sound.
Yeah, it may help. There you go.
I'll do Elva Beach again. Elva Beach access May 17th, 2021, duration 5 weeks. Its substantial completion has been achieved with the steps poured and in place, waiting on fabrication and installation of handrails, which should be complete in 2 to 3 weeks. New plant inspection building at Botanical Gardens started May 24th, duration 16 weeks. Veranda repairs at Camden started week of May 30th, duration 12 weeks. Roadside fencing project 2 started June 7th, duration 4 weeks. Dock maintenance pack 2 started June 14th, duration 6 weeks. Dock maintenance pack 3 started June 14th, duration 6 weeks. Gerald's Wharf dock repairs started June, duration 4 weeks. Mr. Speaker, 2 contracts awarded but awaiting start date. They are Artemis Building B, washdown area awarded to Hart and Soul Construction. Start date is August 2nd. Wastewater section landscaping project awarded to Unity Edible Landscapes. Start date is August 2nd, duration of 4 weeks. 5 completed projects. MDL Lab complete lab with official opening conducted yesterday. Artemis Building Global Innovation Roadside Fencing Project 5. Mullet Bay Road, St. George's, completed July 7th. Creative Exteriors Management Roadside Fencing 1. Smith South Road, completed July 9th. Brown and Company Roadside Fencing 3. Government Hill, completed July 9th. Mr. Speaker, projects out for RFQS for evaluation. 1. Cleaning Pembroke Canal, RFQ received May 6th, Evaluations are ongoing. Pre-contract site meetings are scheduled for next week. Roadside vegetation removal, RFQ received May 5th. Evaluations ongoing. Quarry Slate Shelter, RFQ received June 9th, still undergoing evaluations as there was a large discrepancy in price between contracts. Mr. Speaker, financial, to date, we've spent $1,618,735.14 for 12% of the stimulus.
Minister.
Stimulus funds. Yeah.
Continue.
14 out of 93 companies have been awarded stimulus contracts. We are very pleased with the response to the stimulus program thus far from both contractors and likely employees, all of whom want to get to work and help the economy improve. These projects are bearing fruit, and one can expect to see a continuation of stimulus activity occurring around the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, let me just say, if you intend to speak later today, maybe have your technical look at your system, because normally you come through very clear, but today you seem to have a little issue there. Okay?
They've already been ordered, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Good. Members, the next statement this morning is that of the Minister of Social Development and Seniors. Minister Herbert, would you like to make your presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're right here.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased today to submit to this honorable House the annual report of the Human Rights Commission for the year ending December 31st, 2020. Mr. Speaker, the Commission has a statutory remit to protect and promote human rights under the Human Rights Act of 1981. The Commission's mandate is to both educate and promote the principles of non-discrimination and equality, to investigate and endeavor to settle allegations of discrimination. Mr. Speaker, the Human Rights Commission is required to encourage an understanding of the fundamental rights and freedoms of individuals guaranteed by the Constitution and the principle that all members of the community are of equal dignity and have equal rights and have an obligation to respect the dignity and rights of each other. Promote an understanding of, acceptance of, and compliance with the Human Rights Act of 1981. Conduct research and develop initiatives designed to eliminate discriminatory practices, encourage and coordinate activities which seek to forward the principles that every member of the community is of equal dignity and has equal rights, and promote the conciliation and settlement of any complaints or grievances arising out of acts of unlawful discrimination. And where in its opinion such good offices are inappropriate, institute prosecution for the contraventions of the Act. Mr. Speaker, the Human Rights Commission provides assistance to those who believe they have experienced discrimination or have any questions related to their rights and responsibilities under the Human Rights Act. The Commission is both a public watchdog for human rights compliance and a resource to foster and promote human rights principles by working with stakeholders across the island, including government, community organizations, schools, businesses, and individuals. Mr. Speaker, the Commission works to further its objective of eradicating discrimination through the following means: helping to address any and all queries related to human rights in Bermuda, assisting with complaints of discrimination under the Human Rights Act of 1981, providing dispute resolution services through mediation and conciliation to help settle complaints of discrimination, policy review and guidance with all stakeholders in support of human rights obligations, engaging in collaborative presentations, research, and educational programming, consultations to support the evolution of legislation, just practices, and policies in support of human rights compliance, educational presentations, workshops, and training tailored to meet the stakeholders' needs in support of their human rights, education, and compliance commitments, advice and consultation with government on proposed legislative amendments and to ensure consistency with international standards, administering the Human Rights Tribunal, providing guidance to government, organizations, businesses, and educational institutions on the development and implementation of a human rights-based approach to legislation, policies, programs, and complaint handling mechanisms to ensure compliance with the Act and international human rights agreements. Mr. Speaker, included in the annual report, you will note that during the 2020 calendar year, the Commission received 140 complaints, with the majority of complaints citing claims of discriminatory differences in treatment on the grounds of disability, 31%, place of origin, 16%, sex, 14%, and race, 8%. Of those complaints, the majority cited claims of discrimination within the protected area of employment at 59%. Claims of discriminatory practice harassment amounted to 9% of intakes, or the total intakes received in 2020. Of the total intakes received in 2020, 10% remain ongoing, and the remaining 126, 90% resolved. As 2020 unfolded against the trauma and uncertainty of COVID-19 pandemic, the government of Bermuda faced a challenging balance of the public health measures against safeguarding of civil liberties and human rights. The complex nature of COVID-19 crisis reaffirmed the critical role of the national human rights institutions in promoting a human rights-based approach to managing the pandemic. Fundamental considerations around the individual and collective rights emerged in response to the crisis, as Bermuda recognized we are only as safe and secure as our most vulnerable. The themes of resilience and reckoning became the emblematic of a year defined by social justice and advocacy. The resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement following the murder of George Floyd in the United States saw over 7,000 Bermudians converge in solidarity to support this historic human rights movement. The Commission partnered with Citizens Uprooting Racism in Bermuda, CURB, to produce the Black History in Bermuda timeline. Contemporary research by historians and academics continues to fill a massive void left by earlier works, focused on select descriptions of Bermuda's colonial history, largely erasing the Black narrative. This evolving resource continues to benefit the contribution of historians and knowledge bearers. The Commission joined Bermuda in mourning the passing of Dr. Eva Hudson. Dr. Hudson dedicated her life to elevating the national consciousness to address the scourge of racism. Her remarkable example and body of work will continue to inform Bermuda's human rights education and enlighten generations to come. An equal world is an enabled world was the International Women's Day theme. The Commission joined stakeholders at a convening hosted by the Women's Resource Center to recalibrate collective commitments to accelerate gender parity to ensure a more equitable Bermuda. Data published by the UN Women early in the COVID-19 outbreak revealed that gender-based violence, particularly domestic violence against women and girls, had intensified worldwide. Due to COVID-19, Pride 2020 was a stark contrast to the jubilant celebrations of 2019. However, it was no less significant. The 8th of August convening marked the 7th anniversary of the amendment to include sexual orientation in the Human Rights Act of 1981. The executive officer's remarks emphasized that addition of sexual orientation as a protective ground enhanced Bermuda's human rights framework and renewed our commitment to the fundamental right of freedoms of all. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with the Section 30A of the Human Rights Act of 1981, I am pleased to have laid before this Honorable House the Human Rights Commission's annual report for the year ending December 31st, 2020. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement, the final statement for this morning, is in the name of Minister of Labor. Minister Hayward, present your statement.
Mr. Speaker and honorable members of the House, I rise today to inform you that government intends to extend the 5-year limitation for a payment of an award to able-bodied unemployed recipients of financial assistance for an additional 2 years by amending Section 6A of the Financial Assistance Regulations 2004. The amendment will also make the change retroactive, effective from April 1, 2021, in order to validate payments made since the beginning of the 2021-22 fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, the House will recall that in accordance to Section 6A(1) of the regulations, payment of an award to an able-bodied recipient shall be limited to a maximum period of 5 years, whether the period is continuous or an aggregated period made up of 2 or more awards. The House should be advised that the 5-year term for some financial assistance clients expired on March 31st, 2021. Accordingly, a retroactive amendment to the legislation will be required to address the issue with respect to payments made since April 1, 2021. Mr. Speaker, the mission of the Department of Financial Assistance is to assist Bermudians to maintain a standard of living during challenging economic times. The Department of Financial Assistance has always worked hard to achieve its mission, and as of June 2021, the number of persons on assistance was 2,306. The largest category pertained to pensioners, 1,037, followed by those with disabilities, 786. Then persons employed with insufficient earnings, 245. The smallest category is able-bodied unemployed persons, 238. Although this number continues to trend upwards monthly as a result of the labor market conditions in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to take this time to remind this Honorable House that the Department of Financial Assistance also provides funding support to eligible persons on financial assistance in the following areas: rent, nursing and rest term fees, food allowance, health insurance, disability services, alcohol allowance, personal home care allowance, medical supplies and equipment, telephone allowance. Mr. Speaker, it is expected that the effects of the pandemic will be felt for some time in the foreseeable future. This could not have been predicted at the time the 5-year term was introduced. This government remains committed to assisting and supporting every Bermudan, especially those who face challenges in getting back to gainful and meaningful employment. The government remains steadfast in devotion to the community as the island recovers and heals from this pandemic. Mr. Speaker, as part of the financial assistance reform strategy, the Department of Workforce Development and the Department of Financial Assistance have partnered to ensure that personal employment plans are provided to financial assistance clients. Personal employment plans are designed to strengthen employment support services to financial assistance clients. Each able-bodied recipient will be provided with an individual plan aimed at helping recipients to achieve financial independence. Mr. Speaker, this initiative will help Bermudians to secure gainful and meaningful employment. The employment plans include work readiness, financial literacy, and computer literacy training, along with individual career coaching and support. These plans are a critical catalyst to empowering recipients and reducing their dependency on financial support. Mr. Speaker, as the government has done since the onset of the pandemic, we will continue to provide the necessary support, assistance, and resources needed to carry Bermudians through this unprecedented and, for many, unpredictable time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, that brings us to a close of the statement period for this morning. We'll now move on. The next item on the agenda this morning are reports of committees. There are none, which now leads us to the question period. Members, we have 60 minutes for the question period. Today we have both written questions and questions from the statements that were given this morning. And we'll start with the written questions. And all of the written questions this morning have indicated there will be oral responses. The first written question this morning is for the Minister of Health from MP Dunkley. MP Dunkley, would you like to put your question now?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, colleagues. To the Honourable Minister, will the Honourable Minister please provide this Honourable House the total number of fully vaccinated travellers who have tested positive for COVID upon arrival in or with any day 4, day 8, or day 14 tests since February 1st, 2021? Thank you.
Thank you. Minister? Minister? We don't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the total number of
Yes.
fully vaccinated travelers who have tested positive for COVID on arrival in Bermuda or with any day 4, day 8, or day 14 tests since February 1st, 2021 is 24.
Thank you. Further question? Supplementary, rather?
Yes, supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Honorable Minister, is there any awareness of what vaccines have been used in those 24 cases?
Minister?
No, Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't have that information.
Okay. Supplementary?
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead.
Is the minister able to give a breakdown of the positive cases on each test date?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, in February, there were 0 for arrival, day 4, day 8, or day 14. In March, there were 2. One was a day 8 and one was a day 14. In April, there were 5. 1 was arrival, 1 was day 4, 1 was day 8, and 2 were day 14. In May, there were 2. 1 was on arrival, 1 was on day 4. In June, there were 8, 6 on arrival, 2 on day 4. And in July, between the 1st and the 7th, there were 7, 2 on arrival, 5 on day 4. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. That was your 2 supplementaries from your 1 question, so we'll move on.
Thank you,
Next,
Mr.
no problem. The next written question this morning is to the Minister of Health from the Opposition Leader. Opposition Leader, would you like to put your question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Go right
I
ahead.
was trying to bring up my video. Okay, I'll start anyway.
You can get the video good as you talk.
Will the Honorable Minister please provide this Honorable House, sorry, I was reading the wrong one. Will the Honorable Minister please provide the Honorable House the total number of quarantine exemptions issued by government from the beginning of the program to July 10th, 2021?
Mr. Speaker,
While the Minister is responding, you can sort out your camera for us.
I am.
Yes. Go ahead, Minister. Minister, we don't have your audio.
okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the total number of quarantine exemptions issued by government from the beginning of the program until the 10th of July, 2021 is 294.
And, Officer Smith, any supplementary?
No.
Okay, would you like to do your second question?
Will the Honorable Minister please provide the Honorable House with the total number of quarantine exemption applications applied for each month from the program's inception to July 10, 2021?
Thank you, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the total number of quarantine exemption applications applied for from the program's inception, the 10th of July, 2021 is 460, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary?
I asked for the applications, the number of applications for each month, so I can see a trend.
Mr. Speaker, the honorable member would note that the requirements with respect to the quarantine facility started on the 20th of June, so it hasn't been a month yet.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Do you have any supplementary? Is that Anthony Jackson?
Yes, please.
What's your supplementary?
Thank you. Good morning, Minister. I'm just curious whether you have a breakdown of the category of exemptions, i.e. college students, children, health, etc.
As is provided for under the order, the exemptions category relates specifically to persons that are medically vulnerable and or their caregivers. In order to apply for a exemption, one must produce medical evidence either from a physician or a psychologist confirming the said exemption.
Thank you.
Supplementary?
Nothing from me, Mr.
Okay.
Speaker.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary, MP, excuse me, MP Fairman, go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. You identified two categories of exemption. I understood that there were three categories of exemption down from the original 7. Has the 3 been reduced to 2? Thank you.
With respect to minors, minors do not have to apply for an exemption, though they qualify for same once it is ascertained what their age is and proof of their age. Then the process is more administrative. They're not having to apply for an exemption because they're a minor.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Okay, no supplementary.
No,
Okay. Opposition leader, no vote, no further supplementaries to your question 2?
no, sir.
Would you like to move on to your question 3?
Will the Honorable Minister please inform this Honorable House the total monthly cost to the government for all quarantine sites from inception of the program to July 10th, 2021?
Mr. Speaker, this question has been redirected to the Ministry of National Security by way of the clerk to the legislative officer, as this information does fall within the remit of national security.
Okay. And,
Mr. Speaker, if it's been done.
Good morning. Yes, the questions have been deferred, and in the email that we received yesterday, the Minister of National Security would like to defer them. You are copied in the email, Mr. Speaker.
yes, that's what I was about to say. I was just waiting for the opposition leader to make sure he was clear on what was just stated, and that your question was best suited for another minister to answer. And when that was determined, it has been sent to that other minister. Unfortunately, the timing was a little slow in that the other minister has sought to have it deferred until next week, and they'll provide the answer for you next week.
Okay, then.
Thank you. So that we'll come back to question 3 next week under the respective minister who will respond to it. Thank you. The next series of questions, written questions now, are from MP Dunkley to Minister Ming, National Security. Minister, MP Dunkley, would you like to put your 2 questions?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honorable Minister please confirm for this Honorable House if an exemption letter was issued under the Minister's name as it pertains to the exemption given to the St. Regis to conduct construction during the stay-home period in April, which was ultimately rescinded?
Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that this is actually something that can be found in the public domain, as we made a statement on this on April the 14th with regards to an exemption that was granted to St. Regis.
Okay. MP, the minister is saying that it's a matter that's already in public domain, and as you know, the rules of law for items that are already in public domain, that the minister can refer to the fact that it's already out there.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker?
You have a supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I believe the minister has remarked that that an exemption was given in error. How did the error occur?
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure.
I'm just trying to ascertain whether I'm reading the original. The original is already in the domain. The original here doesn't speak to the error, and I don't have the statement in the public that's already in public domain in front of me to know if that actually falls under that response.
If my memory is correct, it says there was an exemption in error, and that's what I'm requesting.
It's the Mr. Dunkley, MP Dunkley, rather.
Yes,
I can. The supplementary has to be guided by the response of information that's shared to us during this question period. The response was simply that it is already in the domain and in the public domain, which just allows the minister to quote that. Without having the information in front of us right now, we can't refer to exactly what's in there. My suggestion would be for a later date, if you'd like to have a further question, you can use what information that you gather from the public domain and base your question on that, because I just can't verify it right now in front of me.
I understand, Mr. Speaker, but I'm sure the Honorable Minister can verify it because the Honorable Minister made the statement in the public domain.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Point of order?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, this question is put to rest because it's in the public domain, so there can be no supplementaries to it, and you're correct when you say you can't refer to anything. The honorable member needs to go to the next question.
Thank you, Deputy.
You have given the proper direction.
Thank you, Deputy. Yes, and MP, as I was directing you, I don't have that in front of me to refer to. I'm not saying you can't put the question, but you can put the question at a later date if you go to the information that's in the public domain and base your question on that. We just don't have it in front of us right now.
Mr. Speaker, if that's what you please, I'm sure it would be easy for the minister to ask here, but I accept your ruling. Just trying to get some understanding of how the error occurred.
No problem. We can go on to the second question.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honorable Minister please inform this Honorable House if any other verbal or electronic communication was provided to anyone at St. Regis from any minister or the Premier informing or notifying St. Regis of approval or an intention to approve construction work during the stay-at-home period?
Minister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. No, not that I am aware of.
Thank you. Supplementary?
No, Mr. Speaker, because I'm sure we'll have to deal with the public domain, and I will accept your ruling.
Okay. All right. Members, that brings us to a close of the written questions. We'll now move on to questions from the statements that were given this morning. And the first statement this morning from the Premier. There's a question, Premier, from the opposition leader. Opposition leader, would you like to put your question at this stage?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have two simple questions. Can the Premier confirm the amount that the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation has assigned in guarantees for the loan guarantee program? I note that they have total outstanding guarantees of $442,000 approximately. What is the allotment that the EDC has established for its guarantee program?
Understood.
Mr. Speaker, I'll try to answer that as best as I can. I think referring to the statement that it shows the total guarantee capacity of the BDC, and the guarantee capacity is governed by statute. So if there's more capital given, the guarantee capacity is 6 times the capital. So I'm not entirely certain if I can answer the member's question. The opposition leader is asking how much is assigned to the guarantee, and there's no assignment. There's a maximum amount is allowed by statute.
Okay. Supplementary?
I understand the statutory requirements, but I think from best practice and business prudence, at each year we should say that we would allow X $million for guarantees. And so for the budget year, I'm starting from a business point of view, the BEDC has indicated that they would allot up to, I'm saying hypothetically, $2 million in guarantees for the coming year. And that's what I'm speaking to, Mr. Premier.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I think I understand the honorable member's question, and I do not believe that there is currently a restriction. I'm happy to follow up, but what I would say is if there was the limit of which the honorable opposition leader is suggesting, and there were more persons who wanted guarantees, I'm not sure if the honorable opposition leader is suggesting that the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation would not do that. And so that would not be a policy that the governor of Bermuda would support. We support issuing guarantees up to the amount as which is stated and allowed for in law. And I think that the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation has a very prudent board that can look and manage the risks that need to be managed. So I am happy if he wants to follow up with a specific question writing, and I can do my best to get that information for him. But to my knowledge, I do not believe that there is a restriction on the amounts of guarantees that can be given out on an annual basis. I think it is governed by the act, the act itself, and the confines of the act.
Okay, my second.
Further question?
Yes,
Your question or supplementary?
this is a question.
Second question, go ahead.
Can the Premier just tell the community what the application fees are for, the application fees and the fee for the use of the guarantees?
Amen.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have that information off the top of my head. I believe all that information will be on the BDC website, as my statement referred. All fees were cut in half. And
I saw
also, and also the BDC also eliminated the fees for credit checks, which were also charged to persons prior to these matters, and the BDC is absorbing those fees themselves. But I will state that the fees are in the public domain, and they are listed on the website, certainly, or on the applications.
Supplementary?
No, I have no further questions, but I'd like to commend the BDC and Erica Smith for the work that they're doing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Members?
Mr. Opposition Leader.
Members, the next statement this morning that has questions is that of the Finance Minister. Finance Minister, you have a question from the Opposition Leader? Opposition Leader, would you like to put your question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I'm on page 3 of the Finance Minister's statement. And he says, Mr. Speaker, with respect to Pillar 1, initial estimates conclude that approximately 80 multinational enterprises worldwide qualify as in scope of Pillar 1. Can the minister tell us whether we have any of those 80 companies doing business in Bermuda?
Okay. Minister?
Speaker, not to my knowledge. We are doing some work within the Ministry of Finance to do a bit of a data call so that we can try to ascertain the impacts of Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 on constituent companies that are located in Bermuda. But Pillar 1 is largely targeted at technology companies, for which we have none located here in Bermuda.
Thank you. Supplementary? Supplementary, new question.
So you, the minister indicated
There's a new question.
Supplement.
Yeah.
He indicated that he'll be doing a data draw to secure the information generally. When does he expect to have this project completed?
Minister?
We are currently working on figuring out what data we need to get, and then we need to talk to stakeholders and make sure that we frame the data gathering exercise in its appropriate context. But my hope is that we will be positioned for October to have the data that we would need to assess. The OECD has a bunch of work to do between now and October with the finalization of kind of the details around Pillars 1 and Pillar 2. And doing some preliminary work is important, but doing too much work without having the benefit of the detail would be a fool's errand. And so sometime between now and the end of September, we will have finality around what the data set needs to look like.
Second question, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
On page 5.8, and I quote, the minister says, Bermuda has been actively involved in ongoing discussions relating to this initiative to present positions that reflect the national interest and that of various stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
Can the minister provide the details of any discussions that he has had with international bodies overseas in regards to this initiative?
Understood.
Speaker, as I mentioned in the statement, Bermuda is a member of the Inclusive Framework. There's been ongoing dialogue on this topic for the better part of 2+ years. We have representation in the Inclusive Framework, and so we participate in the forums, and in those forums we articulate our points of view with respect to the direction of travel around this initiative. In terms of specifics, I think we've highlighted 4 or 5 particular areas of concern. One of them would be the overall rate that's being contemplated. I think initially there was a 12.5% rate. There's now been, it appears to be some sort of a consensus around 15%.
No.
We expressed the point of view around the method of blending, whether it's jurisdiction or global blending. We also talked about a carve out for economic substance. We talked about a carve out for insurance and reinsurance. We also talked about the maintenance of deferred tax accounting treatment for companies as well. Those are among the things that we highlighted during our discussions and continue to highlight in our conversations with other key allies, other countries that are also participating in the Inclusive Framework discussions and who may have similar interest to Bermuda with respect to the implementation of this initiative.
So who are the allies that we're working with?
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe it would be appropriate for me at this point to disclose which allies we're talking to. I certainly would feel comfortable having a one-on-one conversation with the Shadow Minister of Finance to share that information if necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's all I have.
Okay. Minister of Finance, you also have questions this morning from the MP Pyramid. MP Pyramid, take to put your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your very clear and concise statement to the House. It's always refreshing to get this sort of information given in such a straightforward and fair way. My question arises at page 4 and 5 of your statement, where you quote your previous press statement of the 2nd of July. And at the top of page 5, you refer to the ongoing technical discussions ahead of the meeting of the G20 finance ministers in October 2021. My first question is this: what visibility, if any, do you have about the timetable on and after October 2021?
Minister?
We don't have much visibility beyond October 2021. I think everyone is currently focused on the negotiations that need to happen between now and the end of October in advance of the G20 finance ministers meeting to ensure that the details are worked out for some sort of agreement on the details. The next key milestone, I think, for all involved is the October 2021 finance ministers meeting.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Supplementary, in respect of that October 2021 meeting, and specifically with reference to page 6 of 8 of your statement in the middle paragraph, you quite sensibly anticipate that the Tax Reform Commission isn't going to engage in matters until after the October 2021 details are released. And my question, supplementary question, is this: I mean, presumably the magic is not in the date of October 2021, but in the completion of the technical discussions and their outcome. And we can assume sensibly that the Tax Reform Commission may not engage until we have that outcome. Is that a fair assumption on my part, Minister?
Mr. Speaker, it is not. What I did say is I therefore anticipate the Tax Reform Commission may not engage in the full scope, which means they won't be able to opine fully on the impact of OECD initiatives on potential tax reform. There's still a body of work that needs to be done with respect to reviewing the domestic taxes in and of themselves. And initially, I think the work around tax reform was contemplated to focus almost solely on domestic matters, keeping an eye on developments at the OECD. Anyone who's followed the events would know that there was a bit of a radical change in direction with the inauguration of President Biden. Prior to that, there's a view that the OECD discussions around BEPS Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 were being led out of Europe. And like the prior U.S. administration had taken a bit of a hands-off approach, and that has changed as a result of after January the 20th. So we will do some work around domestic, keeping an eye on developments from the OECD, but any reforms that are going to be based on OECD work will have to reflect the completed work of the OECD.
Thank you.
Supplementary or the question?
Second supplementary. Thank you, sir. I think your last bit of your answer actually does agree with me. What I was wondering is, it's fair to say, isn't it, that the Tax Reform Commission's focus on these matters, not the domestic matters, but on these matters, needs to know the parameters they're working in. So there needs to be some sort of consensus released from after or on October 2021 before they can really engage with them. You can't put the cart before the horse. I think that's what you're saying.
It is what I'm. Although I would say, because I want to be very careful about this, there is work that can be ongoing in parallel to the developments out of the OECD. There will be, over the course of the next several months, various ideas that are floated by members of the inclusive framework for potential inclusion. My team, who sit in those meetings, will be able to kind of ascertain whether or not there's any consensus around certain ideas, and we can start doing some potential scenario playing with respect to our own situation. So I don't expect that there's going to be a hard start coming up to October or once October has happened. I would expect that this would be an issue that would be front of mind for folks, keeping a watching brief on what's going on, and then trying to start to think about potential impacts of that on Bermuda and how we potentially respond to it.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have no second question.
Okay, thank you. Minister, that's the end of the questions for you this morning. The next statement that has questions this morning is a statement from the Minister of Transport. Minister of Transport, you have questions this morning from NP Pearman. NP, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks to the Honorable Minister for his statement on the Marine and Ports Services. Just making sure you have my video. I think you do now. Honorable Minister, you gave a statement to the House about the lifespan and deployment of the ferry Resolute, which was refitted at a $2 million cost. You indicated that the refit will extend the vessel's lifespan by some 12 years. I presume that's 12 years from today, then, or from the date of the refit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Grateful.
Supplementary?
Supplementary. In terms of the lifespan and deployment, you indicated in your statement that it would be for the green and blue ferry routes. Obviously, Minister, you're familiar with what those routes are, but the House and the public may not be. Could you kindly confirm which routes this ferry Resolute will be servicing?
Minister?
So that is mainly, and keep for the most simplistic answer, that's the Somerset route, Tarn to Somerset.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, second question.
The second question, yes.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, you discussed the Marine and Ports Services more generally, listing a history of services dating back to the 1980s. With those services in mind, can you assist us with information on the situation in St. George's with Viking, Orion, and St. George's, please?
Minister?
If the member could clarify, what about the Viking, Orion, what services?
Sorry, I apologize if I wasn't sufficiently clear. As the Minister will be aware, Viking Orion is not stopping in St. George's as part of its home porting efforts, which, to the Minister's credit, I understand are extending. But could you just assist with any information the House should be aware as to why Viking is not going to be stopping in St. George's, and what steps, if any, the Ministry has done in relation to that?
All right, so it's mainly down to four main reasons. the weather conditions, which provided an uncomfortable experience for guests, guests having issues and concerns with boarding and onboarding the tender out at the ocean, out in the middle at Murray's Anchorage. Also a cost. It would be helpful for the House to note that on Fridays, it would cost $9,855 for the Friday tender and $17,520 for the tender on the Saturday. And so in addition to that, there was a waiting time of up to 90 minutes for the tender awaiting dock space, and also the ramp needed at the dock space for the customers who are on average 80 years old or older on the Viking. The ramp did not offer a smooth transition from the tender to the dock, and that was also something that the customers replied made things awkward for them.
MP, before you try to put a supplementary to that, let me just say that the answer that the minister just gave you was a courtesy. Nothing in the question or his response related to the refit program, which is what his statement was about. But I take it as a courtesy.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, I do take it as a courtesy.
If you have a third question that does relate to the statement, you can put your third question.
No, I think the minister's statement was extremely informative to the House and to the public, Mr. Speaker, and I'm grateful for his statement.
Thank you. Minister, you have a second member with questions to you, and that's the MP Dunkley. MP Dunkley, would you like to put your questions now?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Honourable Minister, is the pilot boat St. David currently overseas for refit or repair at this present time?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker, can the Minister give an overview of work that is required and why?
The overview of the work is still being actually assessed as to exactly what needs to be done, but it is anticipated that the work necessary will take up to around 4 to 8 weeks to complete.
Second sub?
A second sub, Mr. Speaker. Why is it necessary that the work is done at this time?
It's necessary for the work to be done at this time because the vessel is inoperable to be able to resume its duties in its current condition.
Okay. Second question?
Yes, second question, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead.
Can the Minister please provide the reasons why the vessel is inoperable at the present time?
Minister?
It was involved in an incident which is in the public domain.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker. Yes, Mr. Speaker. Is there any rough estimate of how much the work will cost?
The estimate work is going to cost approximately $600,000, which will be covered by insurance. And the only thing that would come out of the government's pocket would be the deductible.
Supplementary?
Yes, in regards to the insurance.
Second supplementary?
Yes, correct, Mr. Speaker. In insurance, in relation to the insurance claim, what is the level of the deductible?
That would be $10,000.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
MP Durbin?
In supplementary to MP Dunkley's question, are you able to give a time frame before or by which the boat might be back in service?
I think it would be from 4 to 8 weeks.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Did he say?
I think the minister said the repair work should take anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks.
So second supplementary then, Mr. Speaker. When does the Honourable Minister anticipate that St. David will be back in operations?
In 4 to 8 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. There's no further questions for you on this one. The next statement that has questions this morning would be the statement for the Minister of Works. Minister of Works, you have questions this morning from MP Dunkley. MP Dunkley, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Honourable Minister for the statement on the stimulus projects. To the Honourable Minister, I know in the statement, I believe there was no mention of any work on the railway trail. And in light of the fact that the railway trail is used more and more nowadays, and I'm aware of at least one senior having a nasty fall because of the uneven surface and the high grass, is there any intention by the Minister and the department to include railway trail upkeep in this stimulus program?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, not at this time. The park staff are paid overtime on weekends to address the railway trail. I get regular, and they get regular calls of areas in need of attention, so I'd invite the MP to share that information and we'll get it onto the list.
Supplementary?
I thank the Minister for that. Second question, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
Can the Minister provide the number of jobs provided to date in the stimulus program?
I think the Minister's looking for it for you, for the answer.
I didn't hear the question, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, the question was, can you supply the number of jobs that have been
Provided
available through the stimulus?
I can get that information.
Okay. The Minister is undertaking to get the answer for you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd be indebted in that regard.
Okay. Any more questions?
No, Mr. Speaker, but I don't know if this is appropriate time. The last sitting, the Honourable Minister of Health committed to get back to me on 3 questions in regard to the travel authorization form.
Okay. We'll make note of that again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister Works, you have a further member who would like to put questions to you. MP Kennedy, would you like to put your question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to all. Taking into light on page 1, where the minister has on this occasion and previous occasions mentioned that this is a stimulus program that they put in place, and then on page 2, taking a look at the 9 projects currently going on. My first question then is, amongst these projects, do they require special expertise? And I'm asking that question for a reason. But do any of these projects require any particular special expertise that Works and Engineering is not capable of doing?
Minister?
I would say that in some cases the answer would it is called stimulus because we had a significant reduction in our capital account expenditure for 2021. And so some of the work that is being done is done regularly by public works staff. And so what we're doing is taking advantage of the opportunity for extra funding to get that work done by the.
Supplementary?
Yeah, supplementary. So, bearing that in mind, so financially, does the minister believe that we're not doubling on our expenses by having Works and Engineering facilities not being able to get to the work, or they should be doing the work, I should say. Let me just rephrase that. Based on what he just said, does he believe that some of the work in the schedule that Works and Engineering has, can they fulfill some of this work? Like, for instance, roadside vegetation removal. I would have thought that is a regular thing that Works and Engineering does. Is this because schedule-wise they are not able to get to these projects?
Minister?
That would be correct. The was reduced. We've also had a freeze in the number of jobs throughout government. And so we're not filling those posts. So what that means is that, as an example, the road crews or the parks crews are still carrying out their functions.
Minister, I think you may have froze for a minute there. Okay, continue on. We're back now.
So the answer is yes. For the reason of new posts, causes us not to be able to get to the regularly scheduled work of cutting school fields and roadside works. And so this is assisting in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Supplementary?
Yeah, so considering
that. This be a second supplementary or new question?
I'll do a new question.
Okay.
So considering the fact that we're attempting to save monies on one side, but yet we're spending on the other side, I'm just trying to figure out where the balance is here to the taxpayer.
And the question is, you're trying to get
I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, so if we're saving money because budget-wise that we don't want to fulfill posts that will allow us to get these jobs done, and that is a measure that has been taken by the Finance Ministry as well as the Works and Engineering Ministry to cut back. On the other hand, we're then saying that we're going to take monies from another area and spend those monies to do these projects. Where is the benefit to the taxpayer here? When on the one hand, we're saying we're saving money, but on the other hand, we're spending money.
Okay, Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the stimulus package is as a direct result of COVID and the number of people who are unemployed. And so what we have done is put to the Ministry of Finance a proposal to improve the infrastructure and employ people from the private sector to assist in that regard. The Ministry of Finance gave us a figure of $13 million that we could use in order to be able to do that. And so we are striking the balance in the sense that we would have a significant number of people who are unemployed as a result of COVID. And the government having spent, I think it's well over $60 million in unemployment.
We've lost the minister.
Support those people who are employed if we to employ them.
Okay. I think you're still having a buffering issue there, Minister.
Yeah, I'm moving all around the office and expect people to come at lunchtime to help us out.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do you have an additional question there, MP Kennedy?
Yeah, supplementary to that.
Supplementary, go ahead.
Yeah, bearing the answer in mind, has the ministry looked at the scheduling of work and maybe revamped that to see how it can be more effective if in fact they're not able to hire, if in fact we're looking to go outside of the regular scope of Works and Engineering and get others to do this here? Are there ways that we can find efficiencies of producing more with a new type of scheduling? You know, we tend to just go off of what we've been doing in the past. I'm just curious as to whether or not the minister has been able to find a way of being more efficient with scheduling to allow for work to get done.
Minister?
Lost it.
Okay, let's just have to defer that for now because the minister's obviously having technical issues. If we can get them resolved before we complete, we'll come back to that, okay? Members, if you don't mind?
Thank you.
The next statement that has questions this morning is the statement from the Minister of Social Development and Seniors. Minister MP Jackson would like to put a question to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question to the minister is, how is the minister and the Human Rights Commission working to improve or amend legislation to address this high percentage of complaints by those living with disabilities?
Minister?
Thank you, member, for that question. If the member notes in the annual report, well, actually in my report, I note that actually 90% of the issues or complaints that were made through the Human Rights Commission were resolved. So if she can be more specific with her question.
MP, the minister's asked if you can direct it to more define your question about it so she can provide an answer for you that may fit it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe just a supplementary clarification then. Is it possible for the minister to share just a general category of what these complaints are around? Is it employment? Is it harassment? Like what those complaints are in general?
Understand?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Yes, that information again is in the annual report. I can give you the page in which that information can be found. And that is page 21 of the annual report.
Thank you, Minister. I'll take note, and having it just been tabled this morning, I haven't had a chance to have a look. So I've made note. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? None? Okay, Minister, you also have questions from MP Pearman. MP Pearman, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, at page 2 of 4 of your statement to the Honorable House today, you identified one of the Commission's duties as carrying out consultation to support the evolution of legislation, just practices, and policies in support of human rights compliance. In the report that you tabled on page 43, the Human Rights Commission identified concerns they had that the homeless were among those most at risk from changes to the law to limit freedom of movement to combat COVID. And my question is this, what legislative steps are envisaged by the government in respect of the concern identified by the Human Rights Commission regarding homelessness in Bermuda?
Minister?
Thank you, member. I don't have that information on me as far as information from the Human Rights Commission, but I can get that information to you. But the government is working on initiatives to address issues with the homelessness, and that information will be introduced to the public very soon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supplementary?
Supplementary? Yes.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, by very soon, does that mean a matter of weeks or months or?
I can't give you a specific date at this time, member, but I'm hoping within a couple of months.
Mr. Speaker, second supplementary.
Second supplementary, continue.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Are you able to share with this Honorable House in very broad terms what that legislation will be dealing with?
So there is no legislation, member, that we will be working towards, but more so of a homelessness strategy framework, national policy.
Thank you. Second question, Mr. Speaker.
Go right ahead, put your second question.
Honorable Minister, in the same vein, but more specifically, also at page 43 of the report, the Commission references that they undertook an independent review of the legislation from this perspective. That was the exercise of powers by the government officials under the emergency coronavirus legislation. Is that an independent review that's in the public domain? Page 43 of the report, Honorable Minister.
Yes, if you can give me a minute to get that information.
Yeah. It's the bottom left paragraph if that assists.
So I don't have the information. I'm trying to get it from technical officers, but I can provide that information to you, member.
The minister's going to take an undertaking to get the information to you later.
That would be great. Honorable Minister, I understand that undertaking is to provide the independent review to me, or just to answer my question.
I will check with the Human Rights Commission to see if that information can be shared, and if it can be shared, I can definitely share that information with you by way of your question.
Grateful, Honorable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member. Members, that actually brings us to a close of questions this morning. I think that the Minister of Works is still having a technical problem, so it's probably wise not to try and get that final answer from him. If the House indulges us on that, I appreciate it. So we'll now move on to the next order on the order papers this morning. And members, it's the congratulatory and obituary speeches. Would any member wish to make a contribution in that regard?